How are all of you lovely people doing today? My name is John. Today, I want to take some time to talk about the Denizens. The Denizens, I know, it sounds like a strange topic, John. Why would you ever want to discuss these godforsaken beasts? And it's because I was thinking about them, and they're one of those creatures that we don't get much of an explanation for, and I thought maybe we can dig around and try to see if we can find any explanation for the Denizens. It could be a fun little thing to do. Before we begin, I want to give a quick shout out to Prince Charles on YouTube. I'm at home for the holidays with my parents, and this means I don't have access to any of my recording devices or consoles. Thus, I was unable to record any footage for this video, so I went on Twitter, and Prince Charles was able to help me collect some of the footage for this video that you'll see in the background. So thank you very much for helping me out. A link to his channel will be on screen and in the description. Please do go check out his channel and maybe go over and say thank you for helping me with this video, and possibly subscribe while you're there. So the Denizens, like I said, are one of those creatures we don't get an explanation for at all, quite frankly. Why are they there? Where do they come from? What really are they? Treyarch didn't do much of this in Black Ops 2, unfortunately. They threw in a bunch of new elements, but all they were just gameplay mechanics. They didn't have any backstory, any reasoning. You can look at a number of things from Black Ops 2, such as the demonic announcer in Mob of the Dead, the Denizens, Leroy from Barry. They just threw features in and didn't give it a backstory, and part of this forces us to create our own backstory and our own explanation, and maybe by looking at the Denizens, seeing how they work, as well as their surrounding areas, we can get a better idea of what they might actually be or where they come from. The first thing you're going to want to note about the Denizens is that they are distinctively not zombies. While they do look dead, they're not quite zombies in the sense that the other creatures on the map are zombies. They're not trying to eat the humans and then turn them into zombies. They don't seem to be controlled by the demonic announcer or really anybody. They're just kind of these creatures that are trying to eat us, but not in the same way zombies are. They don't even look like they're undead, or they're not missing bits of flesh. They look fully intact. They just look deformed, or something strange about them. Perhaps humanoid? They definitely do share a lot of similarities between humans. You can look at the eyes, the nose, the mouth, the hands, the feet, although they're missing a finger on each hand, and they also just are slightly differently shaped. The proportions aren't correct, and there's also a tail, so it's perhaps a mutated human, or maybe a human merged with something else. I don't know, that's hard to say. What we can do is look at them though and see how do they behave, and one of the things we can notice from their behavior is that they're afraid of light. They live in the fog. You don't see them in the main parts of the map that are lit up quite well. You only see them in the dark parts of the map that are covered by fog. And they like to remain underground. Whenever you'll enter the fog and they come and attack you, they pop up from underground. And if they ever try to scurry away, they scurry underground, which makes me think they like to live in the dark. And you can even look at their eyes and see how they have very tiny pupils, and what the tiny pupils do is prevent more light from getting in. When a creature has very dilated pupils, that means they like to let a lot of light in, but clearly, because these creatures have very tiny pupils, they want as little light getting in as possible. And the same thing happens when you try to teleport. Whenever you light up a lamppost on Tranzit and then walk over to it with a Denizen, they see the light, and then what they quickly do is scurry away underground, and then this allows for them to hide from the light. Now, one of the things they do when they scurry underground near these lampposts is create a teleporter, and this leads me to think they must have some connection to element 115, and if that's the case, could they potentially be Vril? And now here's why I think this. One, they have this strange connection to element 115 that allows them to create teleporters, and two, they seem to resemble some of the other creatures in the zombie storyline who we believe to be Vril. For example, the Nova Crawlers and the Gatekeepers. The biggest similarity between all three of these creatures would be the fingers. They seem to have these talon-like fingers, while The keepers have 3 fingers, and the denizens have 4 fingers, and the nova crawlers have 5 fingers. They all seem to be the same sort of shape and talon-like features, and they also have a very similar pale skin color. The only main difference between these creatures would be the size and the shape of their body. The nova crawlers and the denizens are very humanoid, while the gatekeepers are humanoid. They just seem to float around more than they walk. They both, though, seem to crawl as opposed to the gatekeepers who float upright. Either way, these creatures are very, very similar, and perhaps they're different mutations or forms of the same beast. Perhaps they derive from the same vril-like creature, perhaps? The keepers, of course, have all these abilities, and perhaps some of these abilities are left over in creatures such as the denizens. And this perhaps leads people to think that maybe they're an experiment. We have HARP located near Green Run. Ted, the bus driver, tells us about the HARP research facility, and perhaps at the HARP research facility they were doing more than just working with the weather. Perhaps they were keeping live vril specimens and experimenting on them. We saw them do this in Kino der Toten, and maybe they were doing it at HARP, and at HARP they created these denizen-like creatures, and then when the bomb went off, then they escaped, and they don't like the light, so what did they do? They went underground, and they hid in the foggy areas where they could avoid light. This could be a possible explanation for where the vril come from. Another thought is that maybe they've always been underground, but when the bombs went off, this allowed them to come to the surface because suddenly there was less light. There was so much smoke and debris in the atmosphere that the light around everywhere was pretty much gone. Civilization had vanished, and they could come to the surface now because there's less light. Right now, those are my 2 leading theories as to where the denizens come from. The thought that they've always been underground, which isn't exactly likely because wouldn't we have found them by drilling underground? And then there's the thought that maybe these are vril experiments that got away once the bombs went off on Earth. The only issue with this is that when you look at the face of a denizen, it doesn't quite look like the face of a keeper or the face of a nova crawler. They don't have those weird fangs. The nova crawlers also don't have eyes while the denizens do, but maybe that's just a side effect of different types of mutations and different types of experiments. Who knows? I wouldn't put it past the Americans to be experimenting on nova crawlers since we saw them do it at 5. Either way, those are my thoughts on the denizens. None of this is facts. All of this is just speculation, and I'm basing all of this speculation on the behavior of the denizens as well as their physical appearances. And this may seem like I'm making it up or I'm just pulling it out of my ass, but I'm looking at this from a logical perspective, and don't take what I'm saying as canon for the zombie storyline. I can't stress that enough because a lot of times people look at my theories and go, John, there's no evidence, and while I try my best to incorporate evidence, there's not always evidence, and when I don't have evidence, I make it very clear that it's purely speculation. But I'm curious to hear what you think. Do you think they're experiments? Do you think they've always been underground? Is there something else I'm missing? I'd like to hear what you guys have to say about the denizens. That's going to wrap things up for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if so, maybe stick around, possibly subscribe for more. Have a great day, and bye.